What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're going over 5 players you'll regret drafting right now. First up, we have Achane. Yes, I remember how insane he was last season. Yes, I understand the upside that anyone has on the Dolphins, but especially an extraordinarily fast running back. Crazy upside. That's why he averaged 7.8 yards per carry as a rookie. But I also know he's not going to average 7.8 yards per carry across the full season. And it's very unlikely they ever really give him like a full workload, especially while Raheem Mostert and Jalen Wright are healthy. Achane had 3 games last season where Mostert was healthy for, and he had double-digit carries. So the vast majority of the time when Mostert was healthy, they were not giving Achane 10 or more carries. Those 3 games were a blowout win against the Broncos, a blowout win against the Giants, and a blowout win against the Commanders. In all other games that Mostert was healthy for, he maxed out at 9 carries, went over 47 rushing yards 1 time. And now we can argue that, yes, Mostert is 32 years old now, that maybe this season we see a reversal, that Mostert is the 1B, Achane is the 1A, and maybe that's true, but I think the biggest point here is that better be true if you're going to take him at his current ADP in round 2 as the 8th running back off boards, a full round ahead of Josh Jacobs, ahead of Derrick Henry. So I get the upside's appealing, and we are always upside hunting in fantasy because that's what wins championships, is upside. But I think we also need to recognize the risk in taking Achane in round 2, given his struggles staying healthy, the lack of volume with Mostert healthy last season. And we know they love Raheem Mostert. They're going to give him all the opportunities he can handle. And the relative unknown of Jalen Wright, who was one of, if not my favorite running back in this draft class. Like, we don't know. Maybe he's going to be a lot better than the scrubs they had backing up Mostert and Achane last season. So I just think there's a lot of risk, and maybe it's a little bit too much risk when you could just draft an amazing wide receiver in round 2, wait around, and then draft Jacobs or Henry, who we know are going to get a ton of touches this season and who will also be on very good offenses. Another player you'll regret drafting right now is Brian Thomas Jr. He, of course, was drafted by the Jaguars in the first round, 4th wide receiver off the board in NFL draft. Thomas Jr. is an amazing deep threat, an incredible deep threat. Not saying that he can't develop into more than that, because I do think he can. My worry is that he's already being taken as a top 40 wide receiver in fantasy. And they did sign Gabe Davis, who's basically just like a worse version of Brian Thomas Jr. Gabe truly is only a deep threat and is likely not going to develop anything more. So given that that's how you best deploy him, well, now how are we using Brian Thomas Jr.? Again, I absolutely think Thomas Jr. can develop into more than just a deep threat. But it seems like, to me, he's going to be asked to, be more than that right away, which is just like a little bit concerning. It kind of seems like they want him to fill that Calvin Ridley role from last season. But, I mean, Calvin Ridley is objectively just a better wide receiver at this point in their respective careers. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr. can elevate past what Calvin Ridley is. But, if we look at Calvin Ridley last season, so what Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be this season, Calvin Ridley is a better wide receiver, right? I'm just a little bit worried that they're going to ask him to do that and that he's not really going to be ready for that. 42.7% of Brian Thomas Jr.'s yards last season came on the go route. That is a jaw-dropping number, not something you ever see. You never see nearly 43% of a player's yards coming on one route, the go route. That is absolutely insane. So we truly do not know if he can excel at anything other than that. And there's a chance that, Gabe can't, because Gabe can only do that. What if Gabe is taking that role and that they're not even giving Brian Thomas Jr. as much of those routes? that just adds to my worry. So maybe we'll get reports in camp that'll ease my concerns. Beat reporters will tell us like, he's really developed his route running. They're going to use him as their X wide receiver, but he's really thriving in that role. Then I can start to get behind this top 40 wide receiver ADP. But until that happens, to me, there's just a little bit of risk, and I just don't feel it's warranted taking him this early right away until we know he can be more than a deep threat. Another Brian Jr. that we're avoiding is Brian Robinson Jr. This time, Commanders let Antonio Gibson walk in free agency. He's on the Patriots now, but they replaced him with a better version, and that is Austin Eckler. Just really, really bad news for Brian Robinson Jr. Eckler is not only just a better running back than Gibson, but more importantly, can be used more at the goal line. Gibson only had 1 carry inside the 10-yard line last season, while Eckler's had 24 in each of the last 2 seasons. He led all running backs in touchdowns 2 years ago. Didn't have as many last year due to a little bit of regression, but also injuries last season. Now, the point isn't that Eckler is now the goal line back and Brian Robinson Jr. is not going to get any goal line touches. That is not what I'm trying to say here. It's more that, like, I don't think, like, last season they were bringing Gibson off the field, bringing other backs off the field to get Brian Robinson Jr. onto the field in the goal line. I don't think they're going to do that. I think if Eckler happens to be out there, it's Eckler's drive, they're passing it a lot, they want to keep him on the field. I don't think they bring him off the field when they get in close because they know he can excel in that role. The other issue is receptions. Like, obviously, Brian Robinson Jr. had more receptions than I think people anticipated last season, but we know he's not a high-end receiving back. We know that that's obviously the strength of Austin Eckler's game, and, that's just an area where it's extraordinarily unlikely that Eckler doesn't win that job. So we're going to see a reduction there. Then you add in the fact that Jaden Daniels is a hypermobile quarterback. We know the hypermobile quarterbacks tend to dump off less because they just scramble instead, right? You have a pocket passer who doesn't want to scramble at all. They'll check down to the running back. Well, Daniels is going to be like, well, why check down when I can run this, for 10 or 15 yards myself? So both of those two things just makes a really scary floor for Brian Robinson Jr. If Eckler is stealing more touchdowns than Gibson did, plus more receptions that he did, if the total receptions as a whole is also dropped, so we're seeing Robinson Jr.'s share of receptions drop, plus the total receptions drops for running back, that's really bad. If we see, reduction in touchdowns because Eckler's there, plus Daniels can scramble some in, like, it's a scary low floor. And you add all of this on and you say, okay, it's not like Brian Robinson Jr. Like, he was touchdown dependent before. He still only had 7 touchdowns in 27 career games. He averaged only 4 yards per carry on the ground. So if we get into a situation where, he's getting like, 9 to 12 inefficient carries per game, maybe 1 or 2 targets, maybe a handful of touchdowns over the entire season, that's tough. And when he's going ahead of guys like Singletary, Chase Brown, Tyjae Spears, who could for sure produce less than him, but who you can at least think of a path to high-end production. Like, you can envision with Singletary, Chase Brown, and Tyjae Spears, you can envision a path where they're really productive in fantasy. It's kind of difficult to envision a path for Brian Robinson Jr. And so for me, ADP, I'm out on that. Another player that you regret drafting is Keon Coleman. I've mentioned him a lot recently, so I'll, kind of keep this one a little bit brief. But in my opinion, he's not an X receiver. And they're coming out and saying he's going to be their X receiver. You just read the room, right? You look, they have 2 slot receivers and him, like, they kind of have to play him at X, but that's not where he excels, right? It's just not the area of his game where he's going to be highly productive. He is not good against man coverage. He is not good against press coverage. We have no evidence that he can command targets on his own. Like, I think the Bills offense is going to be great because Josh Allen is awesome. And even when you're not open, Josh Allen can get you the football. But if I want exposure to Josh Allen, I'll take Josh Allen. If I want exposure to the weapons around Josh Allen, I'll take Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir. I'll take those players. I don't really want Keon Coleman getting a ton of hype right now because of landing spot. I mean, he's an early 7th round pick already. He's going to be a 6th round pick soon. His ADP keeps going up. It's a little bit insane to me. Wait 3 or 4 rounds and draft Samuel or Shakir, or wait a little bit and draft Kincaid, because Kincaid could just be peppered with targets this season. Again, I know there's a lot of targets missing in Buffalo. I don't think that Keon Coleman is going to go out there and command a ton of targets, draft the other players around him. Final player is regret drafting is basically the entire running back room of the Chargers, all of Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Kimani Vidal, all of them. Now, I have said many times that this team is going to be super run heavy. That is a fact. It is likely they're going to be very efficient on the ground. They have a great offensive line, a great scheme. So they're going to be good on the ground, and they're going to run a ton. So you'd think, yeah, I want the running backs on this team. I truly do not believe that they are done adding running backs to this room. And even if they are, this is definitely going to turn into a massive committee. The only way this is not a committee is if they bring in another running back that we're not thinking of right now and choose to give that player a ton of touches. But they are not going to feature one of the running backs in this room. Gus can't catch. Dobbins can't stay healthy, so they're not going to overload him with touches. And then Vidal was the 16th running back taken in a terrible draft class. Like, they are not going to feature one of these running backs. And with names like Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, Najee Harris, all kind of out there in the trade market, I would not be shocked at all. I would actually be shocked if it doesn't happen, where the Chargers don't bring in another running back. And since no one's really considering that right now, the ADPs on all 3 of these guys are just too high. I mean, if you just run a baseline projection for this team, there's no way you can really get to all of these ADPs. You're going to have to tank someone to get the other 2 or one of them a little bit higher. And then if you brought in a 4th running back, who they clearly would want to use at that point if they traded for a running back, it would just completely tank all 3 of these guys. And since I think that's the likely outcome, this early in the summer, I wouldn't do it. As we work our way through the summer, we get into June, July, August. If we're in the 3rd week of August and they haven't added someone, well, of course, now we can bump them up. Now we can start to gain exposure. But right now, there's so much time and there's so many running backs that I think might be moved that the risk is much too high. There's too much hype driving ADPs right now. Personally, I would avoid. So if you watched this far, be sure to hit the like button. And if you want more free content, then hit the subscribe button as well, along with the bell symbol next to it. I also have a free weekly newsletter. If you're into that sort of thing, you can sign up for that, again, completely free, in the description box down below. I'll be back Monday with another Mock Draft Monday. Tuesday, live, 6:30 Eastern. So come to that with any questions you want me to answer. I'll try to answer all the questions you guys submit. There again, live, 6:30 Eastern. We'll do an Underdog draft. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, have a like button, have subscribed to the channel if you're new here. And thanks for watching.